In the mid-13th century, Mohammed ben Alamar of the Emirate of Grenada commissioned the renovation and rebuilding of a small Roman fortress. In the game of Alhambra, 2 to 6 players will take on the role of master builders looking to build the most impressive portion of the palace complex. Unfortunately, the workers that have arrived wish to be paid in their own currency. So the players will need to manage the currency available, the buildings they can construct, and the layout of the palace in order to score the most points and build the most impressive palace. Today on Flashback Friday, we're going to take a look at the rules for this classic board game and talk about why it's one of the oldest games in my collection. So to start off with, Alhambra was designed by Dirk Henn and published by Queen Games in 2003. It was the Spiel des Jahres winner that year and has been in print continuously ever since. The primary mechanics of the game are tile laying and card drafting. So how is the game played? During setup, each player will begin with a fountain and currency totaling 20 or more. When they receive the fountain, it is placed in front of them with the fountain itself pointing away for the player or facing up. When I say the currency can total 20 or more, as you can see here, we have a total of 22 in each of the amongst all 4 different currencies. Now, as that's being done, basically the dealer will deal out cards until they reach a total of 20 or higher, and then stop regardless of how much over 20 it is. Each player will start with a different amount of currency, so it does not need to be the exact same for each player. Now, after the currency is dealt, at that point the game will start, and each player can take one of 3 actions. The first and most common is to build a building by buying it from the market board, as you see here. The market board has spaces for 4 different tiles, and each of the locations is marked by a different color currency. When a player wishes to buy a tile, they must use the currency that matches the color of the currency next to the tile. They do not match the color to the building because there is no currency that will match the color of the building. So they match it to the space next to the building. Now, players can spend more than the cost of a building. However, there are 2 things to keep in mind. If you spend more than the cost of the building, you will not receive any change. So there will be no leftover currency coming back to the player. In addition, if you choose to pay the exact amount, you will receive an additional turn in which you can take any of the 3 actions. So, on a turn, a player can technically receive up to 5 turns by buying each of the buildings and taking 1 additional turn. Now, once the tile is purchased, a player has 2 choices. They may either put it into the palace by placing it next to one of the other tiles and facing up or away from the player. Basically, you want to keep the name and the number on the bottom of the tile. Now, in addition, when the building is placed, you must be able to draw a path in a straight line from the fountain to the new tile without crossing any walls or without leaving any gaps. You may not touch diagonally, so the path from the fountain must go in a straight line. Now, the other option is that you may take a tile that you just purchased and placed it onto the reserve board that each player receives at the beginning of the game as well. Now, the next action is that a player may redesign their Alhambra, meaning they will take a tile from their reserve board and place it into the palace. Alternatively, they can remove a tile from the palace and place it on the reserve board. Or they can exchange a tile from the palace with a tile from the reserve board. If a player chooses to exchange, they must place the new tile in the exact same spot from which they removed the tile from the palace. The final choice of actions is to take new currency cards. At all times, there are 4 currency cards near the market board, and a player may take any one card worth more than 5, so they could take the 7 or the 9, or they can take any number of cards totaling no more than 5. So we have a 2 and a 3. Both of these could be taken as a single action. Now, during the game, as the currency deck begins to go down, you will encounter 2 different scoring cards that are shuffled into the deck during the game, or during the setup. During the first scoring, when the card comes up, each player will look at the different color buildings that they have, and the player with the most of a particular color will receive the points for that particular color. If there is a tie, the points will be split, rounded down. During the second scoring phase, the first and second player will score. So the first player will score more points. The second player will score less points. Again, if there is a tie, the points will be split. There is also a final scoring round, and in that round, the first, second, and third place players will each receive points, again, splitting ties. In addition, during each scoring phase, players will count the length of the wall around their Alhambra and receive 1 point for each segment of the longest exterior wall. So as you can see here, they can receive 8 points from this long wall on the outer edge. However, this shorter wall, because it is not connected, does not score any points. So one of your common strategies will be to make the longest wall that you can, because it's worth so many points guaranteed. Do keep in mind, interior walls are not worth any points. The walls must be on the outer edge of your Alhambra. Now, the final scoring. Final scoring begins when no more tiles can be placed on the market board. At that point, the remaining tiles are sold off immediately to the player who has the most of an appropriate currency. So if there's a tile on the orange currency space, the player that has the most orange currency remaining will receive that tile automatically. They are then allowed to play that tile as normal and add it to their Alhambra if possible. Again, the wall is scored in the final scoring, and after the third scoring, the game is over and the person with the most points will win. Now, I do want to touch on the expansions. There have been 6 expansions released at retail, various other promotional expansions. I believe the big box has unique expansions as well. But primarily there are 6 expansions that were released at retail. Personally, I have 4 of them. Each expansion contains 4 modules. The modules are all optional, so even if you buy an expansion, you do not have to add all of the modules. My personal favorites are the diamonds. Diamonds are a wild currency that can be used in place of the normal colored currency. However, you may not buy a tile with a mix of currency. So you cannot use diamonds and colored currency. It must be all of one or the other. The second expansion I like is the change. If you pay for a tile with excess currency, for every 2 points, you will receive 1 coin at random, so it can be one of the 4 different colors, in return. So it's a 2-for-1 return by paying excess. The third option is the currency exchange, which allows you to pay for a tile with multiple currencies. So there are many others. I will review them all at some point, but these are the ones that I've found the easiest to use, especially when you're playing with new players. So what is it that I like about the game? First off, it's really easy to teach. Many times when we have people who are new to board games come over, this is one that I like to pull out because it's very easy to teach and people will still have a lot of fun. The strategies are not hard. Like I said earlier, you can go for building the biggest wall. It's easy to figure out what tiles people are buying, so that if somebody has 2 brown tiles and the first scoring hasn't come up, and you may not want to buy the 1 brown tile because you won't get any points for it. So it's very easy to see what the strategies are, and both new and veteran players can still do very well in the game. There is also enough happening to keep players engaged. When new tiles are bought or brought out because a tile was bought, that may change your strategy because now you have exact change, and so you can get extra turns. Or different currencies that you were planning on taking are taken by other players, and so now you have to readjust to what's going on. So you definitely want to pay attention during other players' turns. The base game itself is very solid. I like that it supports up to 6 players right out of the box. So especially for us, we like to invite other couples over. So it's very easy to invite 2 other couples and have a game that all 6 players can play. But I played the game for years without adding any of the expansions. I happened to get the expansions very inexpensively, and so it was kind of a no-brainer to just pick through them and find stuff that I like and keep the rest of the expansions for a later date. I also like that the expansions are not necessary, but they do give options. I really like the diamond option and the change option. So it's got a lot going for it. In addition, I have to point out there is an app version of the game on both Android and iOS, and it is absolutely fantastic. It does not have many of the expansions. I believe there's only like 6 different expansions out of the, or 6 different modules out of all the different modules available. But the app version plays very, very well. Full confession, it is my wife and I's favorite to play during Sunday school at church, but we won't talk about that very much. So yeah, if you want to try it out, I would definitely recommend getting the app version to get a taste for the game. Now, what do I dislike about the game? Primarily the low player interaction. Yes, you have to pay attention to what other players are doing, but you don't know what currency they're planning on taking. You don't know what buildings they're planning on buying. So you're mostly just paying attention on their turn so that you know what to do on yours. But nothing you do is going to actually impact the other players directly. There's no gotchas. There's no placing tiles to block, because all of your tiles are placed on your own board or palace area, I should say. But that's basically the only issue I have, and it's my biggest issue with Euro games in general. I don't have a problem with Euro games. I do enjoy them. But sometimes I do wish there was more interaction as opposed to I'm just trying to play the game better than you are. I'm not actually playing against you, kind of a thing. So, but other than that, that's really it. This really is one of my favorite games and one of the best ones, I think. So, in conclusion, I do want to say that despite all of the games that I've purchased since Alhambra, I would not consider removing it from my collection. While I have removed others that I've bought since it. It plays in a reasonable amount of time and is always a great game when brought to the table. In a time when new games are numerous and plentiful, when new games are even released every single week, Alhambra still holds its own and is a valuable addition to any collection. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you'll give Alhambra a try. If you do and you like it, please let me know. If there are any of the expansions or modules that you think that I should definitely be trying, please put it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. But please give a like, share, subscribe, let other people know. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.